Emily Thompson was gone for only a moment, just the time it took to wash a plate at the kitchen sink. In the backyard was her 17-month-old daughter, Lily, accompanied by their new dog, Ranger, a German shepherd the family had welcomed home merely days before. When she looked back through the window, anticipating a sweet scene of her child playing with their new pet, the sight that met her eyes made her freeze. Ranger was aggressively pushing Lily. Initially, Emily wondered if her eyes were deceiving her. Perhaps it was just a game, but it wasn't. The dog's actions were intense, almost frantic. Lily's small form toppled onto the lawn, lying completely motionless. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Emily's heart pounded in her throat as the dish slipped from her grasp, crashing into the basin. Overwhelmed by a tidal wave of panic, she flung the door open and raced towards them, yelling Ranger's name. Then, a moment unfolded that nearly shattered her spirit. Ranger seized Lily by her diaper and hurled her across the lawn as if she were a toy. Emily let out the loudest scream of her life. Her knees threatened to buckle beneath her as every horrifying tale she had ever heard about dog attacks flooded her thoughts simultaneously. How could she have put her faith in this dog? How could she have left her child unsupervised? But as she reached Lily and gathered her into her embrace, she witnessed something that altered her perception of the situation completely. Ranger was not advancing on them. Instead, he was faltering. A moment later, he collapsed. Only a few weeks prior, life within the Thompson home was more serene, settled, and predictable. Emily Thompson was a devoted teacher at an elementary school in Eugene, Oregon. Her husband, David, was a software engineer who worked from home. The two of them were raising their bright and inquisitive daughter, Lily. Their life was pleasant, yet they felt a void. Emily and David had been contemplating growing their family. They had discussed the possibility of another child, but the moment felt off. So, Emily proposed an alternative, something on a smaller scale but equally significant. "What if we got a dog?" she had posed to David one evening. She wasn't picturing a boisterous puppy from a breeder. Emily's heart was set on adoption. She envisioned Lily growing up with a friend who was also in need of affection and perhaps of healing. "It'll instill in her a sense of empathy," Emily argued, "and responsibility." David was hesitant. The prospect of introducing a rescue animal into a household with a young child filled him with apprehension. He was concerned about potential behavioral problems, past trauma, and general unpredictability. Emily, however, promised him that they would proceed with caution and thoughtfulness. They wouldn't bring home just any dog. They would search for the one that was right for them. Following weeks of looking and touring nearby shelters, they met him, a large German shepherd with gentle eyes and a wary disposition. His name was Ranger. He bore scars, some on his skin and others hidden. His past experiences were more difficult than what most people endure. Yet, when his gaze fell on Lily during that initial meeting, his expression softened, becoming almost protective. Emily sensed it as well. An unspoken connection formed between them, one of hope, or maybe trust. It didn't seem like a chance encounter. It felt preordained. Ranger was different from the other shelter dogs. The majority yapped with excitement, wagging their tails in an effort to get noticed. But Ranger remained motionless in the back of his kennel, watching with a calm, silent alertness, as if he were waiting for someone to demonstrate their worthiness of his trust. The shelter employees informed them that Ranger had been given up by his former owner, a person who had planned to train him for guard duty but had instead subjected him to severe mistreatment. He had arrived underweight, showing evidence of both physical and emotional trauma. The shelter staff was uncertain if he would ever completely heal. David arched his brows in concern, a German shepherd with such a history near Lily. Emily was silent for a second, observing Ranger through the chain-link fence. She saw how he remained unfazed by the surrounding commotion of barking dogs. She saw how he looked directly at her, weary but not hostile, as if to say, "I'm not without flaws, but I am trying." The staff mentioned that he had never displayed any aggressive tendencies, even during his rehabilitation. He was cautious, certainly, but his silence was gentle. Emily crouched down before his kennel, and Ranger took a couple of unhurried steps in her direction. Their eyes connected. He didn't lick her hand or wag his tail. He simply pressed a single paw to the fence. And for some reason, that gesture was sufficient. "All he needs is another opportunity," Emily stated quietly. David still harbored reservations, but he relied on his wife's intuition. It had always guided their family well, so they completed the adoption forms and brought Ranger home later that day. He remained silent for the entire car journey, simply lying in the back, his head resting near Lily's car seat, placid and still. Not in the manner of a guard dog, but perhaps of a guardian. Bringing Ranger into their home was an understated affair. There was no barking, no tail chasing, no overt display of excitement. Just a large German shepherd moving with caution through the entrance to his new existence. Emily had everything ready, a dog bed, food, and toys, but Ranger showed no interest in them. He moved unhurriedly through the house, sniffing its corners as if committing the layout to memory. He did not whine or growl, nor did he wag his tail. David monitored him closely, paying constant attention to his body language, particularly when Lily was close. "We can't be too careful," he told Emily on more than one occasion. She concurred. During those initial days, they made sure Ranger was never alone with Lily. If Lily toddled in his direction, one of them was immediately present. Ranger, to his credit, never exhibited any menacing behavior. He would just lie down and observe her, his ears perked in quiet interest. Lily, naturally, was captivated. She didn't notice the scars or his apprehension. She only perceived a large, fluffy companion. She would approach Ranger and pat his back gently, occasionally attempting to climb on him. He never flinched, just sat there like a stoic monument, allowing her to be near. Emily started to take note of the subtle details. She saw how Ranger would position himself between Lily and the front door when thunderstorms rolled in. She noticed how his ears would twitch in response to any unfamiliar noise, even in the middle of the night. She observed how he tracked Lily's every step, not as if she were prey, but as if she were his purpose. Despite this, Emily couldn't completely let her guard down. Trauma can be complicated. Even the gentlest dog can act unpredictably under duress. She was aware of this and frequently reminded herself. Yet, there was an undeniable quality to the way Ranger regarded Lily, not with bewilderment or disinterest, but with focus and loyalty. Emily didn't voice it, but in her heart, she began to think that maybe Ranger wasn't the only one healing. Perhaps he was there to help them heal as well. The morning began with its usual rhythm. Emily had just started a pot of coffee. The home was still, save for the low hum of the dishwasher and the gentle sound of Lily's laughter coming from the backyard. Ranger was out there with her, as he had been for the past several days, watching, guarding, and playing. Emily glanced through the window while cleaning Lily's cup. The sky was a flawless, postcard blue. Lily held a bright red ball, teetering on unsteady legs across the lawn as Ranger trotted alongside her. The scene was tranquil, almost idyllic. And then, the atmosphere changed. At first, she couldn't identify what was wrong. An unusual quiet fell over the yard, the kind of stillness that feels out of place in a setting with a toddler. Emily squinted, peering through the window. It was then that she saw it. Ranger was no longer trotting beside Lily. He was moving with aggressive force, not with playful glee, but with a sense of desperation. His posture was stiff, his head lowered, and his ears flattened. He collided with Lily, sending her to the ground. Emily's breath hitched in her throat. Lily did not get up. A cold sensation washed over her. Her thoughts raced. Was Lily injured? What would make Ranger do that? Then he did it once more. He jabbed her firmly with his snout, pushing her as if trying to move her away. But her form was slack and unresponsive. She wasn't whimpering. She wasn't moving. Emily let the cup fall. It broke in the sink. Then came the moment that almost broke her. Ranger clamped his jaws around Lily's diaper, lifted her with ease, and tossed her across the lawn as if she were weightless. Emily let out a scream that was raw and visceral. Her legs faltered for a second, but an adrenaline surge propelled her forward. She burst out the screen door and ran across the grass, her heart thumping so hard she could hardly register her own frantic steps. A cascade of thoughts flooded her mind. I should have known this was possible. I should have listened. He was too broken. I never should have trusted him. All she could focus on was Lily's limp form on the lawn a few feet from where she had been thrown. Nothing else was important. Not fear, not reason, not even Ranger. She got to her daughter in an instant, her hands shaking and her voice quivering as she repeated Lily's name. Emily's knees hit the grass with force as she reached Lily. Her hands moved more quickly than her mind, frantically checking her daughter over, looking for blood, bites, bruises, anything that might account for what she had just seen. But there was nothing. Lily whimpered quietly. Her eyes fluttered open. She was dazed but conscious. A small scratch marked her cheek. Her diaper was ripped and her shirt was stained with grass, but she was breathing, alive, and safe. Emily was unsure whether to weep or to collapse. She enveloped Lily in her embrace, murmuring her name over and over as if the sound would anchor her to the present. Then, a realization pierced through her terror. Ranger. She spun around, her heart pounding, anticipating the sight of a predator, snarling with wild eyes. Instead, she saw a fallen shape on the grass. Ranger was motionless. His chest heaved in short, irregular breaths. Saliva dripped from his mouth, his body shook, and his front paw was held tight against his chest, twitching. His ears twitched, but he could not raise his head. What was happening? Her gaze swept the yard, and then she saw it. A glint of color in the grass where Ranger had been just moments before. Red, yellow, and black, slithering, a coral snake. Emily gasped. She recognized those colors. Every parent in the South did. Red on yellow, kill a fellow. It was among the most venomous snakes in North America, and it had been just inches away from Lily. All at once, it all made sense. Ranger hadn't turned savage. He hadn't launched an attack. He had reacted. He had taken action. He had noticed the snake long before she had. And while she was indoors, comfortable and secure, he had been outside, putting everything on the line. Emily held Lily closer as tears streamed down her face. Her mind replayed the sequence of events. The shove, the push, the throw, all desperate, frantic efforts to move Lily away from harm. And now she saw the cost of his actions. She crawled toward him, cautious not to frighten him, but he was still. His eyes fluttered, barely conscious, as his breathing grew fainter. His paw, where he had been bitten, was already beginning to swell. "Oh, God," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You were protecting her, not harming her." And I thought. Waves of guilt crashed over her. She had misjudged him. She had been afraid of him. And yet, Ranger had done what no one else could have. He had shielded her daughter, even with venom spreading through his system. Now, she had to be the one to protect him. Emily couldn't recall getting to her feet. One instant she was on the ground in the grass, holding Lily in one arm and gazing at Ranger's motionless form. The next, she was bolting into the house, her heart hammering so loudly it silenced every thought except for one. He's dying. I have to save him. She kissed Lily's forehead, her voice trembling as she murmured, "Stay here, baby. I'll be back. And I'll bring him back, too." Then she seized her car keys, her phone, and a beach towel, anything she could grab to help her move a 100-pound German Shepherd. Back outside, Ranger was still in the same spot. His breathing was faint. His body felt warm, far too warm. The swelling on his paw had visibly increased in just a few minutes. She was aware that venom acts quickly, a matter of minutes, not hours. His time was slipping away before her eyes. Emily crouched down next to him and said in a soft voice, "I know it hurts, but you have to help me, please." But Ranger was unresponsive. So, she did something she had never thought herself capable of. Summoning every bit of strength she possessed, and some she didn't realize she had, Emily managed to roll Ranger onto the towel and pull him toward the vehicle. Her muscles screamed in protest, and her arms trembled, but she was fueled by an unstoppable surge of adrenaline. She lifted him into the back of their SUV, slammed the hatch, and leaped into the driver's seat. Her hands shook on the steering wheel. She hadn't even stopped to put on shoes. She pressed the accelerator to the floor. Speed limits, red lights, stop signs, none of them mattered. "Ranger," she sobbed, "you saved her. I'm going to save you." The emergency veterinary clinic was 10 miles away. Each second felt like an eternity. As she pulled hastily into the parking lot, a vet tech was already running out before she could even get the trunk open. A single glance at Ranger's swollen leg and glazed eyes told them everything. They hurried him indoors. Emily stood by the doors, her chest heaving and her knees weak. She had done all she could. Her part was done. All that remained was to wait. The clinic doors swung closed behind the vet tech as they vanished with Ranger on a gurney. Emily remained paralyzed in the parking lot, her hands still clutching the car door. Her chest felt constricted, her eyes stinging. She hadn't noticed she was holding her breath until she let it out in a shaky, uneven sigh. Inside, the receptionist spoke gently, offering her a chair and a glass of water, but Emily was unable to sit still. Not just yet. Her legs wouldn't cease their pacing. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She kept replaying Lily's laughter in her head, followed by the stillness, then by Ranger's collapse. Time seemed to lose all meaning. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The vet emerged once to inform her they had given him an anti-venom and were keeping a close watch on him. His vital signs were weak. The following 12 hours would be critical. That was all. There were no promises, no words of comfort. Eventually, Emily drove back home by herself. Lily was sleeping when she walked in, oblivious to the tempest her mother had just endured. David embraced her at the door, his face full of questions Emily was too exhausted to answer. She fell into his arms, finally allowing the tears to flow freely. They passed most of the night in silence. Emily said very little, simply gazing at the ceiling, gripping her phone as if it were a lifeline. With every vibration, every buzz, her heart leaped, but none were the call she was waiting for. At one point, she tiptoed into Lily's room. The soft glow of the nightlight cast gentle shadows on her daughter's face, peaceful and safe, all because of him. She sat on the floor by the crib and whispered, "He didn't merely protect you, Lily. He made a choice to save you. He gave everything without a second thought. And I almost didn't trust him." The feeling of guilt returned, sharp and unyielding. She had doubted Ranger, misread him, been afraid of him, yet he hadn't wavered when it counted. As the first light of dawn filtered through the curtains, Emily's phone finally rang. She held her breath as she picked up, her voice a barely audible, "Hello?" It was the vet, and this time, his tone was different. "Emily, he made it. Ranger's stable." Her knees gave out. A sob broke from her lips. A wave of relief washed over her. He had made it. Their hero had survived. When Ranger returned home that evening, the atmosphere in the house had changed. He was frail, his steps unsteady, and a thick, awkward bandage was wrapped around his paw. But the instant he crossed the threshold, Lily let out a happy cry and made her way directly to him, her arms outstretched. "Ray, Ray," she chirped. Ranger carefully lowered himself to the floor, letting her fall gently against his side. He lacked the energy to raise his head, but his tail gave a single, weak thump. That was all that was needed. Emily stood quietly in the doorway, observing them. The emotional weight of the last 24 hours sat heavily on her chest. Relief, guilt, and gratitude all interwoven into an emotion she couldn't quite define. She knelt down beside him, ran her fingers gently through his coat, and murmured, "I'm so sorry. I didn't see you for who you truly were, but I understand who you are now." That night, she stayed with Ranger while he recovered. Lily had drifted off to sleep on a blanket beside him, her small hand resting on his back. David captured a photo of them, but not much was said. Words seemed inadequate for such a moment. In the days that followed, the tale of his bravery began to circulate. Neighbors, friends, and even the local news reported on it. People lauded Ranger as a hero, a miraculous dog. Emily concurred, but not for the reasons they imagined. For her, Ranger's heroism extended beyond the snake incident or the bite. It was about trust. He had every reason to be wary of people. He had been injured, forsaken, and abused. And yet, when the critical moment arrived, he had not hesitated to protect one of them. He had chosen love in the face of fear. And that, Emily understood, was the true lesson. Sometimes, the ones we are most afraid of are the very ones most prepared to protect us. And sometimes, healing isn't about fixing someone else, but about having the courage to open our own hearts once more. As Ranger slept soundly next to her daughter, Emily whispered one final thing. "You didn't just save her life.